Okay guys, so today we are going to put on a Crossfire Nano with an Immortal T onto our Tinyhawk 2 freestyle. See if we can get a little bit more penetration on this little guy. So in our kit we get the Immortal T and we get some heat shrink and a few wires for us to solder on there. So this really frustrates me. As you can see, they've glued, well, I say glued, it's like a soft rubber silicone, the antenna on there. This is really frustrating because you need to run your antenna through different ways sometimes, and having it already attached, that doesn't help. But anyway, moving on. So we're going to wire up our little Nano here. We're going to attach the ground 5V RX and TX to this, and then attach it to our board. On our board here, on the underside, we've got our TX1 pad here, we've got our RX1 pad there, and that's on the underside. We have got a little 5V in there, but on the other side here, if I just flip it over, right here we've also got a minus for the ground and a 5V there. So I'm going to use those two for the plus and the minus, and I'm going to use the RX1 and TX1 on the underside here. Okay, so obviously for that we're going to want our soldering iron, I'm going to use a flux pen. I've also got flux cord solder. Now I think for this, because I want to cut the wires all to the same length afterwards, I'm going to put the wires onto the pads first, then after I come off the pads I'm going to then put them onto the Nano when I've adjusted them all to the same length. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first of all. So you're going to want a good tip for this, because these are quite small little pads. Now we're going to tin our wires first of all. They will have probably been tinned, but they will have been tinned with a no lead solder, and we want a fully leaded. But if you don't have a good tip, you're really going to struggle with this, so make sure your tip is in good condition. Now you want to leave a little bit of solder on your tip each time, not too much, but just a little. Stop it oxidizing and turn the temperature down each time. That way you keep your tip in better condition for longer. Right, so I'm going to put a little bit of flux pen on the RX and a little bit of flux pen on the TX. Now the way this wants to go down is quickly. A couple of things we want to do. We want to try and heat up the pad fraction after the wire, because the wire will take a little bit more when we do it. And we don't want to do it too slowly, because we don't want the pad separating from the board. And another key thing is, if you're going to take the wire off or there's a problem, really make sure that is heated up properly, because otherwise you'll literally pull the pad off the board, and then that'll be the end of your board. Okay, so now we're going to tin that pad. I feel like that's a little bit too much, so I'm going to take a little bit off. And put a bit more back on. There we go. That's nice. Not so bad on the TX because you want the it's got a bit more distance between it and other stuff. Right, so I think we'll put on the RX. So RX. And there's our TX. And they will go to opposites. So the TX will go to the RX on the TX will go to the RX on the Crossfire, and the RX will go to the TX. Okay, so again we'll get a little bit of flux pen on the pads. And now we're going to do the tinning on that. Okay, so now we're going to tin that pad. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to add the ground. Now the 5-volt. Okay. Right. So now I want them to all end up the same length. Basically, they're not far off each other. Because I'm going to twist that. Let's just get that old antenna out of the way. Right, we will twist them together. Like so. Now this is either going to go on top or it's going to go underneath, but that's about the right length. So now we'll cut all of those the same length. So it will be a neat non-kinked join to our Crossfire. I use my nails to take enough flex off. Now we're tin or nano. There's our tinned nano. Okay, so the white wire is going to the RX on our Tinyhawk board, and the yellow is going to the TX on the Tinyhawk board, and they want it to go to the opposites. So this here is our RX, so we want the TX to go to that, and this is our TX, so we want the RX to go to that. So I think for awkwardness we'll start from this side and come this way. This is our ground, this is our 5 volt. So we'll start with the 5 volt, the ground, sorry. Here's the ground. There's the 5. This is our RX going to our TX. finally our TX go into our RX. Actually that's a bit long, let's give her a little trim. Straighten that up. Okie dokie. So apart from removing our original antenna, that's all of our soldering done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check it out, set it up, make sure that that is all working okay before we carry on. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is power on the Tinyhawk. You're going to do that and you're going to see that if it's a new nano, that is going to be flashing ready for it to be bound. So we're going to hit model, we're going to scroll down, and you're going to get to internal and external RF. Yours will be on multi-sky, multi-frsky, etc. So you're going to want to change that to off. Then you're going to come out of that and you're going to come down to external RF mode. And you're going to see again you get different choices. And you're going to hit Crossfire. Okay, so we've got that. And we're going to back out of that. We're going to go to System, Crossfire Configuration, Micro TX. I'm going to go down and we're going to hit bind. When you do this, this is going to flash up on here that it's going to update the RX. So you're going to hit yes, update, and then that will update the firmware within the nano. After that it will go into bind, it will bind it, and then you'll be all good. So that's how you bind it to your Radio Master TX16S. Okay, so we're in beta flight. We're going to go to ports and we connected to UART1. So we're going to change the serial RX and turn that on. And that's going to activate that UART for our antenna receiver. Save and reboot. Then we're going to go to configuration. We're going to scroll down. And where it says receiver, in that option we're going to go to serial based receiver. We're going to select that. Then below that, in this box, we're going to change that option to Crossfire. And that is all we have to do. After we've done that, what we've got to do is save and reboot. And that should be us all connected. And then we can simply disconnect. And that should be us.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Okay, so now I'm just going to unsolder the original antenna. Now, when you do this, really make sure that you've got it hot, because otherwise you could pull off the pad. And we don't want to pull the pad off, because then you're not putting another one on. Now, you know, I've put Crossfire on this now, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future. I might put it back to normal. So I'm going to bend that upwards, and then I'm going to thoroughly heat it. I'm not pulling, it's starting to ease it, and it's up. Touch the other one and we did. Now I could see that as I did that, the board heated up enough that my ground tried to come off of there, so I'll just fix that. Now we can just get rid of those blobs of solder on there now while we're at it. There's no point leaving them there. Alrighty, so we're done. I've put it in beta flight, we sorted it out in beta flight, we changed the settings there, we've bound it to controller, we've soldered it to the flight controller. Here's the Immortal T, what I did in the end. So I've taken two big zip ties, I've put them around the plastic upstands at the back, and they're going out diagonally. I've then held the Immortal T against it, slid the colour coded red heat shrink over the top of it, and that is holding beautifully. That is nice and secure. It holds it at the back. It can take a knock, it can take a beating, while at the same time being quite compact. I could have trimmed it up, but I didn't want to. I'll keep the full length to get maximum range. Obviously we increased the width of the quad by probably 1.5 inches overall. But I'm happy with that. I think that's a good placement. Might end up heat shrinking again and putting inside an extra piece of zip tie, just in case the prop gets bent and tries to cut it up. But I think that looks pretty good. It's really strong, and it doesn't interfere with anything going on with the frame. We're away from the carbon, so yeah, happy days. I got the nano in the bottom there, and I put that in between my plastic water shield that I'd previously installed. So it's the water shield that is keeping it fairly firm. Okay, you can see I can move it a little bit, but it's not loose, rather than it being compressed against the flight controller, you know, more importantly the gyro. Now I did, to do that, I did increase the upstand height. These little upstands here that are holding the flight controller, I increased them by 2 millimeters. Here's the original, and then here's the new one, and you can see there's a 2 mil difference, but that 2 millimeters really did make all the difference. So there we go. We're set up in beta flight. We're bound to the controller. We've got the Immortal T connected up, and we're ready to go. So let's get her in the air and see what she does. Okay, so you can see we've got 95 RSSI. Our link quality is 300 there as we go off. These are farm fields, private farm fields, so we're nice and safe from everybody. And then you can see straight away the RSI drops down quite quickly, so does the link quality, but importantly our link quality there sits at 199. If you get to 100, then you've got a bit of a worry, because it could fail safe anytime after that. But it's sitting there really steady, that link quality, and that's the important bit, is our link quality. If we've got a good link quality, then we're pretty safe. Now already we've got a long way. In my goggles the VTX is struggling, although the picture looks better than the DVR in my goggles. Now I would have fail safe back there. Back there is where I fail safe before with the antenna modification that I'd done, which gave me extra range. And now we're at about 1 kilometre, and I'm not prepared to go any further now. we're right back there. And as you can see on the way back, and this was my worry, was on the way back I wouldn't have quite as good signal with the VTX being tucked behind the battery there. But that is enough. I just have enough battery to get back. I was fighting wind here, so it's not surprising that it caned the battery quite a lot. I think the whole flight was only 2 minutes something. When I'm just flying around doing loops and stuff around me, I'm getting about 4.5 minutes with all of the mods on this. But there you go. That's pretty good. That was pretty good. Well, there we go. I was pretty impressed. I mean, I know Crossfire's good. I knew it was going to be good, but that is more than enough now for range on this little puppy. I think it's past now what you can get from the battery or from the VTX. You can see I had to turn around then. Really, I was really getting in danger of losing VTX, and I did it over private farm fields and that stuff, so it was safe and not going to hurt anyone and not a dangerous flight or anything, because that was about 1 kilometre, and I really didn't fancy trekking off trying to find a tiny little quad that was actually running out of battery, and I might not even have the little beeper on the from the motors to find it. So that was as good as it got. Now you'd have seen on that the RSSI and the link quality after the first 200 meters just dropped rapidly, but then they balanced out. And that's what I seem to notice that you get with the Crossfire, is it will drop off to a level pretty rapidly, but then it evens out. And the link quality there, I think it stayed at 199, that's great. That's, you know, I could have flown, I reckon, so much further than the battery would have ever allowed. I was fighting wind then as well, and I think that whole flight was maybe 2.5 minutes maximum, and I can get probably 4.5 minutes out of this battery whipping around. But that just caned it. Against the wind, and I just wasn't prepared to push it anymore, really. But it gave you good enough idea, I think, of how good it is with the Crossfire, and I'm more than happy. And I think that apart from, I might change this to the smaller T. You can get a mini T. I've got one on my Beta 95X V2, and I could swap that out, put this Immortal T on the 95X V2 on the outside of the ducts, so it wouldn't interfere with the flow, and put the small one on here, because you can see that obviously this does affect the flow from the props, which has got to affect the flight characteristics and performance. It's physics, it's got to. So I might change that, and apart from, I might change the camera. This came out of the Beta 95X V2 analog when I got it changed to digital, and it's okay, but maybe we'll change it for a better one, because I think next, for the last, it's probably going to be the last video for the Tinyhawk 2 freestyle, is our change to this lollipop antenna. And I might actually, instead of cutting the plug off, sheathing and direct soldering, I might attach one of these plugs to the board instead, so I can swap the antenna out when I want to, or if the antenna was to get ripped off, it would just pop the plug out instead and not hurt the board. I don't know. I've got some of the plugs, I might look at that, but either way, no matter what, we're going to try this antenna next, the Omni directional circular antenna, and we'll do the same flight. We'll see if I get better VTX on that exact flight, and that will be the next video, because other than that, as you've seen in the other videos, we've done it all. We've done the XT30, we've done the Crossfire, we've put the slightly better new versions of the motors, well, not all of them, we just saw one of them on. We've put the LEDs on, we've got the little splash guard in there and the bumpers, and we did the upgrade with the anti-jello mount for the Insta360 Go. And with all of that done, I think once this antenna's on there as well, that's as good as she's going to be. I'm not changing the VTX out. I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. As you saw just from that video, unless you're going to start like chucking a giant battery on here to try and get a bit further, but once you get to a certain point, the weight of the bigger battery outweighs the performance, and the time will decrease again. So I think as I've got all the other quads that I've got, I probably won't upgrade the VTX. Never say never, but I probably won't. So this next video with this Omni antenna will probably be the last one. But there we go, there's the Crossfire. I hope it helped you guys. I hope it was informative, or you just enjoyed the video. If so, please give us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you want to see more vids like it. Really appreciate it, it really helps me. Thanks guys.